Star Wars The Clone Wars holds a very special place in my heart as one of the most captivating pieces of media I've ever consumed. Its unique watch any arc at any time aspect really appealed to me, and each major arc managed to retain my attention even after multiple consecutive rewatches. The Brothers arc, which reintroduces Darth Maul and introduces his brother Savage Opress, is in my opinion one of the best arcs of the whole show. However, amidst the amazing narrative of this arc, one character stood out to me, Mother Talzin. Her presence, characterized by her cultish red robes and bizarre facial tattoos, radiated an unsettling aura that piqued my curiosity when I looked at her at first. Upon looking into Talzin's background, I discovered a character with a mysterious, intriguing, and powerful history. While information about her early life remains pretty rare, it is known that she ascended into her tribe and got the role of mother after the death of a previous Night Sister named Zalem. Interestingly enough, there is one key detail about her background that people are often uncertain about. What was her deal with Sidious? Well, this actually gets explained to us pretty early on within some of the Dathomir comics. Long ago, Talzin's mastery of magic caught the attention of Darth Sidious, who was then plotting to ascend to galactic dominance. Around 40 BBY, Sidious made a special trip to Dathomir to discuss further approaches with Talzin. He was aiming to combine his knowledge about the dark side of the Force and Talzin's knowledge on Dathomir magic. This discussion between them led Sidious to express his intention to train Talzin as his Sith apprentice and right hand. This plan remained quite unrealized, however, in classic Sidious fashion. Instead, sensing the potential in the young Maul, Sidious abducts him from Talzin, separating the child from his kin and heritage on Dathomir. Having her son taken from her, Talzin then started to plot against Sidious. We see the scheme actually fully matured in an attempt to kill Sidious orchestrated entirely by Talzin. Near the end of the comic, Sidious decides to play Talzin's game and is then lured to Dathomir, only to find his apprentice Dooku being used as a pawn to gather enough life force to physically resurrect the Great Mother. Talzin then takes full control over Dooku and starts to fight Sidious, which proves not to be the most optimal idea given that Sidious immediately zaps Talzin out of Dooku's body. However, on a twisted turn of events, this actually manages to bring back Talzin and in her entirely physical form. This little scuffle then ensues one of my favorite panels in all of Star Wars comics. A noticeably weakened Talzin proceeded to then hold off not only Sidious's Force Lightning, but also one of a weakened Dooku. In terms of power scaling, this single panel would certainly put her on the same level, if not arguably above Clone Wars Sidious. Now, let me actually explain this take because it actually may confuse some of you. For starters, Talzin was stated to be weaker by a Night Brother upon revival, so she would have needed to rest if she were to be able to fight. However, there was practically no time for her to rest between her revival and expulsion from Dooku's body. In other words, this Talzin is certainly not at her full power, and that in of itself is extremely terrifying to think of. Were she at her full power, the long-term look of Star Wars would have been drastically different. Now, some may argue that there are scans floating around claiming her to be no match for Palpatine. However, those are actually in context of the small brawl Talzin had in Dooku's body and should have no relation to the actual fight they had, comparing the actual Force lightnings, quote unquote. Now, let's stray aside from Son of Dathomir and let's discuss one of her lesser known fights, and that is the one and only one with Mace Windu. And to everyone's surprise, she was actually able to do pretty good in this fight. In fact, she was able to clash with him for quite a while. Unfortunately, the fight ended within an inconclusive manner. For those that didn't watch the episode, essentially she loses her physical form due to a weird experiment she was pulling off in a not so relevant planet, resulting in an explosion and her just kind of disappearing into the abyss. Now, obviously that is a very dumbed down summary of the actual arc and episode, but let's be honest, that episode wasn't too flashy or too important within the main line of Clone Wars, so I just kind of briefly talk about it. Unfortunately, nowadays Talzin isn't too relevant within the scope of modern day Star Wars. Disney tends to hint at her powerful existence from time to time, though, most recently in the Ahsoka series, which we see Morgan wielding Talzin's sword, which has a highly sought after property that a few people actually remember: the ability to deflect lightsaber attacks, which retrospectively isn't really performed by that many people to be considered a very commonplace thing. So her kind of getting this shout out and mention in Ahsoka is still pretty nice to hear. But who can this powerful Dathomiric witch actually beat, and who would she lose to? Well, this actually goes surprisingly high within the context of the tier list, being powerful enough to be considered one of the strongest figures in the Clone Wars. In my opinion, she can easily beat heavy hitters in the Clone Wars like Obi-Wan, Maul, Savage, and even Count Dooku. Who she loses to, though, is a bit more of an open-ended question. I would like to assert that, she would begin losing to some of the Revenge of the Sith roster, but frankly, the only people who I can say that certainly stomp her would be people like Yoda, Mace Windu, and Revenge of the Sith Anakin and Obi-Wan. However, I think you could likely make a case for her holding her own in a few of these fights. But I will leave it at that for the debate in the comments. As usual, if you disagree with any of my opinions, you can reach me through a few Discord servers. Right now, the one I'm active in the most is 501st Legion, which would be linked in the description. And as always, I highly appreciate you guys' viewership. Now out. Don't lich anybody in the comments. I'm looking at you, Aslick.